Hello, everyone. Welcome. We will get started at about 5 after. So if you have your beverage of choice, if you need to stretch your legs for a second, please do. I am excited that you're here with us. Maybe you attended the first panel on the truth behind the job market, job hunt. And I'm so excited to welcome Michelle, Bonnie, and Sydney to the second panel. Got some great tips for you today, some insight if you're on the job market or not. If you're not, maybe you know someone that is, send them this link immediately. Welcome them to the panel. But overall, too, for even if you're not on the search now, you might be in the future. So think about those questions you had in the past, the questions that you might have in the future, and bring them to today. So just another 2 minutes or so. So again, welcome everybody. Very excited for you to be here. And we'll get started at about 6:05 as well, depending on where you're at in the world, as we let everyone get settled. Now, I'm going to pick on Bonnie for a second because I know that she's at Talent Connect. Anything major in the headlines right now in the talent world?
I would say big things we're talking about are AI everywhere, in terms of uh, both navigating, I guess, like how to incorporate like AI while maintaining candidate experience and that side of things, and then also how candidates are like using AI, how the workforce should be using AI, upskilling in that area. So AI everything, and then uh, gosh, what was the other one? Yeah, just like the future of work kind of that topic and what the workplace might look like a decade from now.
Like what benefits package do we give robots? As do they get the same insurance
Are we
plan?
going to live in a world where we only have to work like 3 or 4 hours a day because robots are doing the rest?
Mm-hmm. Do you remember there was that one speech? Who was it? Some sort of president, right? Was it? Do you know what I'm talking about? He's like, productivity is increasing by so much that soon we'll only have to work 1 to 2 days a week, and we just
I
yeah,
don't know
we
who
just
it
killed
was,
productivity.
but I'm pretty sure that's how it was in the Jetsons. And Reid Hoffman, who was the founder of LinkedIn, he's no longer with LinkedIn, but the founder, um, I think like made predictions like that. But
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna get my super duper Jetsons car, and they still didn't they still like run on treadmills? I guess still have to work out in the future, but let's we'll talk a little bit about AI today. We are at 5 after. We are going to get started, and just want to again welcome everybody here to the truth behind the job hunt. I thought it was really important that we heard from experts in the field. I feel like there was a lot of myths out there, a lot of headlines, a lot of fear mongering. And why don't we go to the source and hear from people that are actually dealing with job seekers, but most importantly, also organizations, the organizations that are doing the hiring. Like, what are they saying? And this is our chance to hear that and really figure out like what's going on out there to hopefully help us, right? Help you, help the job seeker land that next job within their career, or hopefully even just like be more prepared, have the tools, have the information to not only help yourself, maybe also help somebody else. Because the more we can get like real information out there to people about what actually works within the job market, the more likely it is that we can kind of create some positivity and hopefully optimism around the fact that you have your next opportunity in front of you, which is neat. That's really cool. I think we sometimes get lost and forget about that we're growing in our career, no matter how defeatist we feel at that point in time. So let's get into it. If you don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Benjamin Ritter. I am a leadership and career coach that guides leaders to become fearless in their career. I have some podcasts out there, I have a lot of media. So just follow me on LinkedIn, Dr. Benjamin Ritter. Most importantly, though, I did come out with a book last year called Becoming Fearless. And I'm going to be looking at who's asking questions and who's engaging. And we have some features right now where you can only kind of talk to the panelists and the host. But if you do share and you do ask questions, I'm going to be watching and I'm going to select 3 people from today to receive a free book. So I will watch for your name and then I'll reach out to you post event and send you a copy of Becoming Fearless. So please engage. And your questions, I bet someone else has that question too. It's not only going to bring you value, it's going to bring someone else value. And hey, you might get a book out of it too. So introducing our panelists, we have Bonnie. Bonnie has already started sharing, so thank you, Bonnie. I appreciate your expertise. Um, Bonnie is a recruiting leader at Zapier, which is an AI orchestration company that hopefully everyone should just go check out if you haven't heard of it yet. It's pretty neat what they do with AI and automation. Bonnie began her career as an educator in education training, but spent the last decade in talent acquisition, working with school systems, nonprofits, and tech. So again, currently leading the go-to-market operations recruitment team. So go check Bonnie out. Also on LinkedIn, but if you also check out Zapier, it's pretty cool. I use Zapier for a few of my functions, and they're rocking. They have a lot of really cool automation that makes work easier. We also have Michelle, who brings over 35 years of recruiting and hiring experience to the table, along with a coaching certification. So Michelle and I get the jive on just coaching in general and helping people grow within their careers and within their life. Um, Michelle is also a principal consultant with Recruitability. So if you haven't heard of Recruitability yet, please go check that out too. And last but not least, we have Sydney, who is a practice director at Robert Half and oversees the marketing and creative recruiting divisions across North and South Carolina. With a ton of recruiting experience, partners with clients and candidates to fill those mid to senior level direct to hire roles. And last year was recognized as the #1 global producer for marketing and creative. Pretty neat. We have some incredible experts with us today. I am so excited that all of you are here. And this is just a little tidbit of their experience. So please go connect with them on LinkedIn, go see their actual profiles and history and what they're doing out there and how they're helping companies and job seekers. But let's actually dive in today because we're not here just to read bios. We're here to figure out how we can help job seekers. So, Sydney, what would you say is one word or phrase that would describe today's job market in terms of like what you experience?
Yeah, I would say the one word that really comes to mind is evolving. I mean, I've been recruiting now for 5 years, and things have changed so vastly in those 5 years. I mean, COVID, we had remote work. We're now back to a lot of companies fully in office again or making that transition. Clearly, there's a lot of emphasis on AI and how that's evolving and how companies are utilizing it. So I think really the biggest takeaway is adaptability is everything. People who are staying ahead of, as I say, the trying times or the evolutions occurring are the ones who are going to be keeping, winning at the end of the day.
Sydney, I fear about that like all the time. I think at least once a week, I ask myself, like, how can I evolve to be more competitive? How can I increase my expertise, not just my skills? Who do I need to be? Who do I need to know? I actually, the other day, I was walking around the lake in Austin and I was like, do I need to get on TikTok? I was like, I hope not. I really hope not. So love that. I love that you've shared that word. I hope we can dive into it more today. Michelle, would you like to chime in?
That's so funny because she literally took my word. That was the word I sat there and put to place it because it is evolving. So I'll go with transitional, which is a play off of that, and just how you've got to be ready for change. And to your point, like, do you hop on TikTok real quick? Or, it's not the same way of like you sit there and go on LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever and fill out 5 job postings that day and then turn around. You've got to be transitioned to really work every day 8 to 5 to find a job now. It's not like it used to be. And so transitional would be the word I'd use right now.
Hmm. Okay, Bonnie, do we have an additional word or phrase?
Yeah, I actually was gonna be in a similar vein to them, so I'm like, oh, let me pivot here. So I might say kind of just confusing or frustrating. I think for all parties involved, honestly, because I think the processes feel like they're kind of unclear to job seekers. I think recruiting teams and companies are dealing with new challenges that they're not really actually equipped to tackle. Everything from like fraudulent candidates to just like the massive applicant volumes that a lot of systems and processes aren't meant to tackle. And so I think on both sides, there's actually just like a lot of frustration and like what is going on here and what do we need to do? And I think the answer is what Michelle and Sydney shared in terms of like changing and evolving. But yeah.
Mm. Well, can we just stay on this for a second? Because, like, what is different? And we may just be saying what people know right now, but from people, from professionals that have been in this space now, working with organizations and not just candidates, what do you see as being different? Whoever would like to chime in.
I'll go
Yeah.
ahead, Sid. I just think it's different in that, I think before we had better access to the direct hiring managers and things like that. I think it was easier for somebody that's even applied to be able to call and be like, hey, I just applied and get the person that was hiring. Nowadays you're not even sure who's the actual hiring manager and how many people are involved, and it's not one person, it's usually multiple of people now that are involved in that decision. And the process has gotten longer. I think a lot of people have gone from 1 to 2 traditional interview process to now 4 to 5, and on both ends it's works and doesn't, because sometimes you're losing candidates because they finally got something and they're like, I'm out, and now you just missed out on that really candidate, or vice versa. Candidates are getting frustrated and they're moving too slow and now they're scared, and it's just crazy. I would say that would be what I see the most, um, as far as transition and changing from where it used to be.
Hmm.
I guess I can add a little bit onto that. I think years ago, as I'd highlighted, I think processes were really succinct. We knew exactly who was going to be involved, how to get a hold of a hiring manager, kind of get your name in front of, the end stakeholder. And nowadays, our processes, sometimes I have clients that say, hey, we want to hire this person yesterday. We wanted a button seat yesterday. And then their hiring process takes 2 months to fill a seat. And half the time, candidates, not looking to wait that long, or they're waiting anxiously and overthinking, do they even want to consider me for this role? So I think things have just gotten messy, as Michelle had shared, but also just not organized, not succinct either.
Yeah, and I would add, I think on both sides, like kind of over the last decade, it used to be you pretty much, I mean, remote work was pretty atypical like 10 years ago. I mean, there was some like, you might work from home a few days a week, but you generally had an office. Therefore, like when we were hiring people who lived in the city that we were hiring in, and generally like limited geography, limited talent pool. Often you kind of knew, networks and things like that of who could be a good fit because everyone's like in the office together. And I think the like a variety of both, systems, and then the at remote work just kind of exploding meant that people just got used to like I can apply anywhere, and there's, and that means on the hiring side, especially I work for a remote company. I mean, our app volumes are crazy. It's hundreds to thousands for every role within days. Like people will say, why didn't you just take the role down when you had 100 applications? And it's like, because that happened in 30 minutes. Like, and then a lot of great people wouldn't have been able to apply. On both sides, people are dealing with bots. Like candidates are dealing with, at times fake jobs or scams. And so there's a lot of confusion there. And then on the hiring side, I mean, they estimate like up to 50% right now of remote software engineering jobs are fake. And so we're actually trying to figure out things like checking IP addresses against locations, and I mean doing all this stuff that like I would never have thought of even a year ago, to try to find like, is this even a real person, or is this a fraudulent candidate? So I think there's like all of those things going on. And so yeah, I think like a lot of that then I think also feeds why the processes are getting longer and more rigorous, because hiring teams are thinking like we really need to pressure test. This person could be using AI, so we can't just trust the responses that they're giving because they may not actually know this or have the skill. So we need to do more reference checks. We need to do, so I think like the rigor just keeps upping because the stakes feel higher.
Yeah, I agree with what she's saying 100%. That's spot on. And especially when it comes to, you mentioned a minute ago just about how you put a job up and then within 30, it feels like 30 seconds, there's 100 applicants for it. And that's part of the problem too, because, people now are just applying to apply because they're so desperate. And, we're hearing a lot too from both sides, right? Where candidates are saying, no, really, I'm qualified. I will do that job. I'll take a $50,000 pay year cut and things like that. And then you've got companies going, well, I don't want them to do that because they know in the long term, as soon as something better comes open, they're going to leave, right? So you're battling these tug and war games between your applicant and the company. And the company's doing it internally too. It's not just when a recruiter's involved, but this is the game that they're playing. And then you're talking about the process not working as well anymore. Even with AI and all that out there, you got so many applicants coming through, and there's good and bad to the AI processes because they're going to help weed out some of those so that hopefully you're only seeing the strong candidates, but you're also sometimes missing solid candidates because maybe their resume didn't say just the right words that you had in that system. And that's where sometimes when a recruiter helps, because I can now get in front of that DM and go, okay, I know you didn't see it here, but here's what it says. So many complexities to it now that it's not even funny. Where before, it literally, as you fill out a paper application, turn it in and get a call. And I mean, I remember going to interviews with them pulling out my handwritten application, that I applied for. Not all this technology now.
And honestly, like, I don't even know a tool. I mean, we use like the most state-of-the-art applicant tracking system and it doesn't have this like AI functionality. So I hear that and I'm even like, well, then what are people using? Because it's not native in the applicant tracking systems, like, because some states don't even allow you to reject, like, use AI to reject people or even prioritize them. So then I'm like, are people like building their own systems? Because I mean, it sounds like you are, but I'm curious like what technology you're even using that's caught like
Oh,
allowing that.
we're not. We're not.
Oh,
I'm
you're
just
not.
saying, no, no,
Okay.
no, 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 no.
Yeah,
We're
because I'm
not.
not familiar. I've demoed to like
No.
20 different
This is just
applicant
what I'm
tracking
hearing.
systems. I haven't
Yeah.
ever
Yeah, this
seen an actual technology that does that. And so I'm curious, like, are the people who are doing this then, I don't know if you're like familiar with what companies or what products are doing it, but yeah, like I just it makes me wonder if people are just like making up their own tools to do that or something since I'm not
Right.
familiar with
No,
how to do that.
I think it's more of what people think is happening, right? So
Oh,
I'm not
got
saying
it. Yeah. So, because I don't actually think
just
it's
saying,
happening, but I do think the
yes,
perception is
it's a
there.
perception that
yeah,
people think that that's what's happening to stuff now, right?
in in a job market though. So it's great. It's great to hear from everyone. It's messy. It's messy on every single side. And so hopefully that creates some grace and some empathy and some positivity because there's a lot of people out there that are kind of mad and frustrated. And kind of what you just said, Michelle and Bonnie, talking about what people think that there is some robot scanning their resume that is automatically disqualifying them. Now, I even know like LinkedIn has a tool that will say someone's a good fit or bad fit. So maybe someone is using some tool to label resumes, and because they're getting so many, they're just throwing out some they're not looking at. Or maybe they're getting so many resumes that they're not even looking at all of them because it's impossible. Like, are you gonna with budget cuts and talent cuts? Like, how are you gonna even look at all of these resumes? And most of them, and I'd say a large percentage, because I've talked to recruiters, I've talked to companies, don't qualify for the position. So what's super neat is that from what I'm hearing is that if you actually do stand out and A equals A on your resume, because in a talent war, companies looking for the exact fit or even a little bit of a better fit, not too much of a good fit because they're like, you're not going to stay, that you could still actually get selected and get a call. And but it just may be hard to get seen. So based on your experiences, because I think this is probably what a lot of people are thinking about. Because the number one struggle I hear is I just can't get interviews. And I'm like, okay, well, first off, is your resume written by AI or written by you? And does it actually match the position and what they're looking for? But how can someone really get seen? So uh, who wants to come off mute and jump in on that question first?
Yeah, I'd love
Okay.
to share some thoughts. I mean, one thing I'll say is like so many people with great resumes and great qualifications they might even get seen, but they're not getting interviews. I've heard that like it's about 1 to 2% is going to be pretty typical if it's, or like is doing pretty well, I should say, not typical, but like if you're getting that, you're probably in a pretty good spot, especially if you are applying for remote jobs. And a lot of that is due to like the applicant volume. Um, and so if we get 1,000 applications in 3 days, and of those, even 100 meet like the minimum qualifications, we're not interviewing 100 people for one role. So only 10 of them are going to get interviewed, and it might just be a first come, first serve. It might be the person who sent a really great message to the hiring manager and said, hey, recently applied for this role and wanted to share a little bit more about why it's such a good fit. And the hiring manager sends the recruiter a message and says, this person looks awesome. Let's talk to them. Recruiter's going to pick that person, even if they were, the last applicant before they took that down, because the hiring manager is excited about them. So I think sometimes it's like doing those things to get a little bit of visibility, because you know, you're awesome, but so are so many other people in that candidate pool for that role. And so I think like doing those types of things can help. I think being like an early applicant helps. I do think, especially if it's a remote job, you basically have to meet 100% of the qualifications. You have to kind of be like currently doing that job. If you did that job 10 years ago, it's like, hey, things have changed. They don't know today's state, or the concern about, they're not going to stay. If you haven't done that job yet, it's like, why take a risk on someone stepping up into this role when we can hire this person that's currently doing that job at a company just like ours? And so I think like really applying for those like perfectly aligned roles, at least if you're in a space that is highly competitive, which there are some fields that aren't right now, but a lot of people aren't applying for them because they require qualifications like, nursing, forestry, construction, like they're struggling to hire people. But even teaching, I came from education. Teaching, we were willing to take chances on all sorts of people. But a lot of corporate roles right now are like negative job creation. So if you're not already in that space, it's really hard to get in.
Adding to what Bonnie said, I think the biggest thing I would agree with from what you had mentioned, Bonnie, was going out of your way and finding a hiring manager if you're able to, like going to the LinkedIn page, reading through the job posting. A lot of job descriptions will actually list the title of who the role reports to. Go reach out to them on LinkedIn, but don't just have a generic message, or don't just say, hey, I applied to this, I'd love to talk. Think outside of the box, come up with a differentiator, pitch your background in that quick message. That will absolutely stand out. But I also think positioning yourself firstly on your resume, making sure your resume is optimized for keywords that are in the job description, taking that extra time and making sure that you're, again, using the keywords that you're seeing. So if your resume is getting scanned by AI for whatever reason, or a recruiter's eye who's using a Boolean string, that it's going to populate and it's going to highlight. But also making sure that your resume mirrors what your LinkedIn profile shares. It's not always just about your resume. Sometimes hiring managers are finding candidates through their LinkedIn, or if you are pinging a hiring manager on the side, the first thing they're going to click is probably your LinkedIn profile. So take that extra step and ensure that, again, all the different touch points that you're having, firstly, are helping differentiate yourself, but also are helping you stand out as well.
Yeah, I'd echo that as well, and say a lot of making sure that you are taking the time to make sure that everything is aligned between your resume and LinkedIn. Because I've literally had people come back and say to me, well, their LinkedIn doesn't match their resume, for which one's true, right? And rejected a candidate for that reason alone. Watch your post, like especially the type of role you're coming on. If you're going for a sales role or something that's going to create where you need to be seen and that you're out there, then your LinkedIn should show that that's what you're doing. Right? Your LinkedIn should show that you've got that kind of personality and you're out there all the time and you're posting the right content, and that your content is relevant to the industries and the things that you would be working for this company. It's huge. I mean, I just got to the new job I am now, and that was one of the first things he said to me is, oh yeah, I scrolled all over your LinkedIn. I was like, all right, well, there you go. But I mean, that was part of it, because, part of my role is in sales. And so he wanted to make sure that I was aligned with what I was doing. And had it not been, I probably wouldn't have got the call. So they're looking at all of these things before they ever even call you for some of these key roles. And so if that doesn't align, then they're not going to call you.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing is we're in a market. It is difficult right now. And because candidates, the talent doesn't have the power like they did maybe a couple of years ago, you can't make as many moves. You can't be sloppy. Your resume, your experience, your LinkedIn, it has to align with the job you're applying to. And even when it does, you're going to hear back 1 out of 100, two out of 100, and that's cold applications. And so branding matters. And when someone's opening up your resume, they're looking at a story. Does this person meet the job that I'm trying to hire for? And they have to ask that same question for 1,000 candidates if they even get to that many. And so, well, branding's one piece, but if you have that, then there's an opportunity to stand out. Yeah, whenever someone says like, go to the hiring manager and say something unique and pitch yourself, I just picture the guy outside the window with the boombox over his head, like playing his romance song to his crush. I feel like we have to get back to that. And even if we're virtual, we can't go and hand in our resume. Maybe we can sometimes, but how are we trying to approach these perfect positions with a little bit more than applying online? And it's difficult to put that pressure on candidates because I was talking to someone the other day. I was talking with a client, and they're like, "Yeah, I found this perfect job. I put together my profile for a week, and then I went to go submit it, and I submitted it, and this is surprisingly the position was still up after a week because normally they're not. But then they're like, then I got rejected. I couldn't believe it, and I was like, okay, and that's the story a lot of people are still telling themselves, and we have to be a little bit more unique in this market as a job seeker, and it sucks. Honestly, it does. It's tough. Um, have we found any creative ways that really capture the eye? Like, has anyone on this, uh, like in the panel, been like, wow, okay, that person did this thing, and that thing caused me to then reach out to them.
Sure. Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
I was actually still thinking. I was going to say, I think the main thing was, I think Cindy touched on this. They sent me a message on LinkedIn, but it wasn't just the, hey, I want to connect. Or my favorite, they just connect and don't say anything, right? Um, After they just apply for the job. But it was a little bit more thoughtful about, and it was more personal is not the right word, but it had an intimate feel of relating to kind of their story and what they've been going through and how they just needed a chance. And I promised if I could just get in with me for like 5 minutes, they would prove, which a lot of times is. I mean, and that's one of the things I love about being a recruiter is I think sometimes we learn how to read things because we have the time a little bit more to look at resumes, and you'll see that one thing that's going to have me call you. And then I just learned all these wonderful things about you that your resume doesn't shine, that then we can help you create and make it happen. And then we have the better connect to get you connected to that hiring manager because now we are boasting for you. But yeah, I think it's being more intentional about the messaging and the way that you're reaching out is what's important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think I think the biggest thing is like here's what I've accomplished that really aligns with this role. I mean, that's really what hiring teams care about. So it doesn't have to be creative, but it's like I've had someone who applied for a sales role message me and say, "Hey, I've been 120% plus to quota every single year for the last 4 years. Is it worth like a conversation with your team?" And I was like, let me pass that, pass your profile along. And I saw he was working at a company that's like on sort of our target list that we want to hire from. So I'm like, great, you basically check all the boxes, like high achiever at a target company. So yeah, like passed him along to the hiring team. So it doesn't have to be crazy creative, but it's like, what do you think they really care about in hiring? And usually it's that kind of stuff. What did you achieve that's like really relevant? How have you done if they've got on the job posting, this person's going to be leading our transition to a new applicant tracking system? Then you want to make sure you're telling them like, hey, I've actually transitioned 3 different applicant tracking systems for companies in the past like decade. I'm really good at this. So, I mean, just like what's going to be like most relevant, how can you show them that you've kind of done the kinds of things that you would be navigating in that role? I have seen some people do like videos, like record just a short video that feel, sometimes personalized, sometimes not. I had one person who was sort of like a atypical applicant send like a deck that kind of walked through why they felt that they were going to be a really good fit for the role that they were interested in. And again, those are things that our recruiting team will pass along to the hiring team and say, hey, like, what do you think? And a large number of the time they'll say, I like the grit, I like the energy, so let's like give them a shot, even if it's not a perfect fit. And then I also think you can keep in mind, like, it doesn't have to be a recruiter, doesn't have to be a hiring manager. Check your mutual connections to that company. Like, you go to the company page on LinkedIn, under the people tab, you can see if you have any first degree connections there. Reach out to those people, and see like, hey, can you figure out who the hiring manager is, or can you share my profile with them and share like these couple of notes about me. So, like using your networks, I think can also help.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, people genuinely want to help other people. So, especially as Bonnie said, forgive me, reaching out to more than just the hiring manager or the TA contact, and possibly even finding other connections at the company, trying to add them. Clearly don't go crazy and be adding 50 people at the company and spamming all of them. Be really specific, but try to find other people within the organization, within that department, that you would maybe be a peer with, that could possibly put in a good word for you. But make that outreach really specific on your experience, your background, and you'll probably see the fruits of that labor hopefully come through.
I love how we've kind of highlighted that it matters. It matters what you've done. There's a little bit of like, what's your energy? What's your enthusiasm? Show me you care. But at the same time, like, I'm hiring. Like, passion doesn't cut it right now. Like, we need people that can do the job. And so can you highlight that? And so in a little short blurb, not a whole page, say, yeah, you're transitioning to this new, technology. I've done it 3 times. Let's chat. Does that make sense for us to chat? Now, can you talk tomorrow? Does it make sense for us to have a conversation? And they might share that with a hiring manager. They might share that with the recruiting team. They might want to jump on a call with you. Now, to Sydney's point, if you're reaching out to people just at the company to build relationships, because relationships do lead to introductions and referrals, then you are leaning into the curiosity about them and what they've done and how they've gotten where they are. And you don't have to really kind of have those those qualifiers because they're not hiring you. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Bonnie, did you have something to add? Because just checking. Okay.
Nope, I
No?
forgot to mute myself.
Okay. Well, so what are some things in the market, kind of zooming out a little bit, that you've seen are causing a lot more fear than they deserve? Because I think one of the things that is the most, like, the biggest watch out for people that are job seekers is them to become defeated, is for them to stop searching, because then they're never going to get a job, because the only way to not get a job is to not search for a job. So maybe we can quell some of these myths for a second, or some of this fear. And maybe what is real too, a little bit of reality.
I think,
Go ahead.
sorry, I'll keep mine short. I was going to say, I think for me, not to dive back into AI, I know it's a big topic of our conversation today, but I think a lot of people are nervous that AI is going to be taking over their jobs. And if I'm unemployed now and AI is taking over, am I ever going to get a job again? I work with a lot of very creative people with the types of roles they hire. I have copywriters and graphic designers saying, oh my goodness, like, the rumor on the market is that copywriters are a dead breed. Like, we're never going to get a job again because AI is taking over. So I think there's a lot of talk on the market just about, will my job still exist? And that's what I tell every candidate is, with AI, as much as you can involve yourself in it now, familiarize yourself with, what's coming about, what platforms are arising, seeing how you can educate yourself. And that's, of course, general things like Google searches or using ChatGPT to just educate yourself. But trying to get some applicable hands-on experience with it is really going to bode well. So that would just be something that has been at least all over my LinkedIn feed recently.
I promise we'll go to some other fears, but in the panelists, do we have any advice on, like, what even qualifies for knowing AI nowadays? Like, can I do a LinkedIn course on AI? Like, Like what certificate matters? Do companies care about that, or do they want to see that you've actually integrated that into your company? Like, is it doing like small projects? Okay, turning it over to you.
I'm happy to speak to this. Like we have an AI fluency expectation as part of our hiring process, and we've been transparent about it. I can even once I finish talking, I can search like the blog posts, and we've shared like kind of what it can look like at different levels. But I think for us, like the absolute baseline, like we can't hire someone if they're not using AI in some capacity. But it's a pretty low bar, like a rudimentary bar in terms of like have you found ways to incorporate it into your work, even if it's just like an AI assistant? And then at kind of higher levels of fluency, which are expected for certain roles, it's around like, have you built agents? Have you incorporated like AI into different workflows? Those sorts of things. And so it does get more into like, are you actually sort of um, I guess like building with AI when you think about solutions like are you able to like incorporate AI into that? Are you able to automate things like with AI so that it's operating without it's not like you asking a question of an AI assistant, but it's actually like you've built a workflow where AI is part of the process and it's happening in the background and making things like more efficient for you. Those sorts of things. I think this is one of the areas where there's actually like greenfield opportunity because the technology is so new, at least for generative AI, not like AI as a whole, but like what we're all talking about with Gen AI. Like it's so new that I don't think that people are necessarily looking, at least we don't have like a look for this certificate or something like that. What we have is more of like either skills assessments where we're asking them to do something like with AI or uh, those sorts of things, but it's more about demonstrated skills. So, there might be courses out there that could be helpful. A lot of the AI companies have free ones of their own that you can kind of work through, but I think it's more of like how can you demonstrate the skill and show like how it's actually, saving you time or allowing you to get more done is kind of what I've observed.
And
Okay.
Bonnie, on that note, and then jumping over to Michelle, I had a client the other day have during an interview, like a networking call. So did like the whole thing, reach out to someone at the company. It wasn't a hiring manager, it was somebody else, but they had a job open. Like they were a senior leader at the company, and they're like, "Oh, I see you have AI on your profile. Okay, let's have another conversation, but I want to move you into our official interview process. But to do that, create an AI tool that would be relevant for our work stream and share it with me." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And it wasn't, I don't think it's going to be anything like magical. It's going to be how are you leveraging an AI agent to take this data that is relevant to our company or something that we do as a company and then create some sort of output. And they said, like, yeah, anyone that comes in needs to be using AI to be more productive at their job. And that is becoming more of an expectation. If anyone here is looking for a job in AI, that is something that you can do. And it's awesome to hear you say it's not a certificate. It's actually like learned experience or something they can show.
And that's
Okay. Oh,
That prompt
yeah.
that you said is literally like what half of our hiring managers just ask. It's like, great, for your next interview, build something, and then we're going to ask you to walk through it. And then they're going to pressure test because it's not hard to have someone build that for you and you just like send it to them. So then it's like, great, we're going to like actually ask you, like, show us how it works, show us how you built it, like screen share and let us see like what tools did you use? How did you connect them? Those sorts of things. Um, but yeah, like that's exactly what it is on our end.
Yeah, and I was just going to echo that, I think for us too, it has not been certificates or anything like that yet. I'm sure that's going to come at some point in time, I'd imagine. But right now it's the more of just, even some of it is just as basic of how are you using it to create, more communications and better thought processes and how you're doing things, not just about the streamlining of a process, but also are you using it in just the general day-to-day conversations to make sure that before you make a post, right, but then taking it and making sure it doesn't sound like you did it through AI, right? So still adding your personal aspect to it. So you're not just copying and pasting because you want to be personalized in it versus just being the person that's going to copy and paste, right? Which is, I think, what even this kids at school are going through, right? I think teachers are going, you can use it, but you've got to make it you. We don't, it's just like plagiarism out of a book, right? It's kind of the same concept of just making sure that you're using it, but using it in a way that is productive and creates more opportunities, right? So in sales, how would you use it to write scripts? How would you do it to do things like, a communication with somebody in LinkedIn? What would be a segment conversation you would do. Heck, we were even using it as a coaching tool, right? So you could literally, and I don't know if you've done this yet, Benjamin, or not, but I could literally sit there and say, hey, I want to practice like I'm cold calling somebody for a job, blah, blah, blah. I want this person to be tough on me, da, 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 and then give me feedback. And it will literally do that. Right? It will literally sit there and role play with you even. So I think knowing enough about AI that you know it does these kind of things gets you a foot in the door. It doesn't mean you have to be an expert at it or have a certification in it. You just need to be clear that you understand that AI is pretty powerful and it can do a lot for us.
And if possible, try out some of the other tools. Like you should know the words of the programs and softwares outside of the GPT or Chat GPT or AI, whatever you want to call it. So check out like the Perplexities of the world. There's some other smaller tools that are focused on specific types of tasks. It can highlight that you have listened to an AI podcast or something like that. Okay, let's zoom back into that question around fear mongering. Real or fake? Toss it back to the panel. What is something that you would like to bring up?
I think maybe there's a fear out there of reaching out to people. I think everybody's so busy, right, that we think, oh, I can't reach out to that person. What if that ruins it for me, type of a thing? And I think we go back to what we said before. I think if you're doing it with intention and you're doing it the right way, it can hurt you, not help. It can help you, not hurt you, kind of thing. So I think that would be a thing. I think people are just afraid to even take the next step. Well, I applied, now what? Right? There's this fear if I take the next step, it could cost me the job versus getting me the job. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Hmm.
I've heard that somewhat too.
So with everyone here, we've been talking about LinkedIn a lot. Uh, what else? Like, is that the only tool we have right now in the job search? Is that where we're at?
I mean, personally, as someone in staffing, um, I'm doing a lot of business development. I'm doing a lot of cold outreach. I think email is another amazing avenue if you can figure out, you know, of course, the company's, web page, and then test out a couple of different email templates. Once you figure out one, you can probably find a couple different emails for people at that company. That's probably another way to stand out potentially. If you have a chance to somehow get a even business line, you can try to get to someone's voicemail. There's always different ways to stand out. I do think LinkedIn is definitely one of the biggest ones we see, especially in a professional, more corporate setting. But I also think don't forget about all the other touch points that you have access to, between your phone, with texting, with calling, and then email. And I'm sure there's plenty of others, but those are the most simple ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I would just
Any
throw in
others
there
from the
too. The other
panelists?
one for me is a handwritten note. And I know they take a little longer, but right now they're taking a while to look through all these anyway. Your resume may have gotten overlooked, but now they've gotten this envelope and it's a little, thank you for just even the time of looking at my resume, kind of thing. Now all of a sudden they're like, well, who is this person? And they're gonna be curious, right? Curiosity got the cat, right? Kind of thing. So I think even old traditional handwritten, if you have that information and can send just a quick little note card, thank you, can go a long way in getting you in front of somebody else.
And I'd
So
say,
no,
sorry, one other thing.
yeah.
Um, Not going back to LinkedIn, but I think there's also other ways to stand out on LinkedIn. I think Bonnie may have mentioned a video that people can send. I think I've heard a lot of people also using voice notes to hiring managers as well. So there's other avenues than just sending a generic message. Um, think about, okay, can I send a quick 30-second video where they're putting a face to my name, and a voice to my name? Same with a voice memo. There's also ways to differentiate yourself on a generic platform like LinkedIn as well.
Bonnie, anything that you've seen? Pizza boxes with resumes in them? Anything like that?
No, I mean, I work for a remote company. We have no offices, so no one's sending us anything. And when people do call me, I actually have the opposite reaction. I'm like, why? How did you find my personal number? And do you have permission to use this? So I don't recommend that personally, if it's not something like publicly available. But I have seen, I feel nervous like saying certain things because it might feel excessive to people. We have had people be like, hey, I noticed that you all are working. Like I saw this post from your CEO and saw that you're working on this. Like, here's something I put together for you. Here's a Zap that I built. Here, like one guy built like used our product to build something and honestly didn't even work, but it was just like the idea that he did that. And then he shared it on LinkedIn and he's like, I applied at Zapier. I'm currently like learning the product as I go. Here's something I built. Feel free to like copy it, make a copy of this or something. And it was like one of those things that one, it catches your attention because your company was tagged and some of your employees were tagged in it. So it's like, whoa, okay, like someone should respond to this. Because it's out in the world now. And then it's like shows a lot of initiative that someone tried to like build a solution. So again, can't be doing that for like every job, but if there's like a dream job, I've seen people do some of that kind of stuff. I've even had people post like their rejection notes. We send, I think, like pretty good rejection emails because we share like resources and things like that. So we sometimes get shout outs for that. But a lot of times those honestly go viral. And then we're always like, oh gosh, this person's so nice. Like, did we make a mistake? Like those sorts of things. So I do think sometimes like that kind of like flattery is there's some saying, I don't remember what it is. But there's something along those lines that you get more sugar with I don't know.
Flies,
Bees with
flies with
sugar,
honey, or
flies with
bees with honey,
there's
something.
something. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some saying that yeah, but I've seen people do that kind of stuff publicly that like gets a lot of positive attention. And sometimes the next role that comes up, you're like, let's go back to that person. So anyway.
Yeah, I love just the underlying theme, which is you have to get out of just the application process and you have to think bigger. Like, what's the brand that you want to portray to the world and how can you get the company to see it? And what value can you create for that company through your efforts? And I think there's this balance between like, how much effort am I supposed to put in for 1%? Like it's like, and so then how do you relate that effort to your broader career goals? Building relationships, building a brand around a specific type of topic or skills, something where it's not just going to be a loss for you to do this thing. Are you learning? Are you growing? Are you connecting? If so, then how can you then show up a little bit more to this company in their ecosystem? The people that work there, the companies that work for them, the tools that they use. It's all about like, how do I get into their network, into their world? How do I get them seeing my posts? How do I get them seeing my name so that maybe they want so maybe my application seems more familiar. Maybe they're being willing to share my name to someone who is hiring.
Something I
Um,
wanted to just add to clarify is like, I think a
mm,
lot of this stuff also requires that you have a low volume, high effort strategy. And I think a lot of job seekers are responding to this market by spamming low quality applications to companies, which is never going to get you very far. Like everything is AI generated. It's like every resume is unique. Like I've had people apply for 4 jobs at my company. Each resume is different. And it's like, well, now we know none of these can possibly be right. So, you're like, you seem fake, even though I'm sure what they're trying to do is just, get a foot in the door. So I think it's shifting away from that to saying, like, I'm going to be really diligent about which roles I go after. They're going to genuinely be right fit roles. I'm not shooting my shot like randomly, or applying for things that I'm just never going to be the most competitive candidate for. But then I am like taking these other steps so that I've got my network working for me. I'm getting attention on that application because it's not possible to do all this stuff. It would be exhausting to try to do all of that while applying to 300 jobs a week or whatever some people are doing. But I do think it will get you further.
Yeah, I was going to
well, then
say
how?
too, sorry, but you were asking about other things and I hadn't even thought about bringing this up yet, but look for your networking opportunities as well. Face-to-face networking with people, even if you don't know if there's a job opportunity in there, just starting connecting with these people and having general conversations at an ABC Central Texas event or an ARMA thing, manufacturing, if you're in that, whatever your industry is, find those events that are going on and get out there and start going to them and attending them and meeting these people because, again, one day they could be that connection that leads you to that job opportunity. So that's another way I would say. Not only does that help you if you're trying to find a job, it also just helps you in general professional development and things like that as well.
Yeah, and try not to go to the job seeker events. Sorry, anyone here, but it's like the events that the company maybe is hosting or sponsoring that you want to work at or something within your industry. Okay, so we're talking about like high quality, which people that are that are like, okay, but a job is gone in 24 hours. Like, how do people know when to put in this level of effort into an opportunity? Um, and I can't tell you how many people that are like, they finally get a hold of someone and they're like, oh yeah, we filled that job, or we're off making an offer to that job. And it could feel like all that effort has just been wasted. So any suggestions? If it's older than 24 hours, don't apply. No, I'm just
The
like,
silence,
no,
I
really
know.
like what?
I
Yeah.
think I mean, some of this is like playing craps, right? In Vegas, you're rolling the dice, hoping that your number pulls up and it works out. But I think if the job is tailored to a specific skill and you've got the qualifications, they're going to slow down on the hiring. But I mean, like we just worked a CEO position and we were down to 3 major interviews, but we still submitted 2 more people because something could have happened to fall out. So I would say, even if they tell you like they're not taking them, still try to see if you can get your name in front of them and talk to them and make those intentional conversations because nothing's done until the day they sit their butt in that desk. And I'm not even talking about an offer letter. I mean, we've had it where the offer letters even come through, and the next thing you're back at square one researching this again, but you didn't fit out your application. Well, guess where they're going to go first? We're going to go to the people we just missed before we open it back up. So I would say apply.
And also, I would just remind people, if you're not aware, you might be, but a lot of those numbers that you see if you like look on LinkedIn that look, says 300 people have applied or 1,000 people have applied, they're not necessarily accurate. Often they're tracking clicks. Like my company, we don't have LinkedIn Easy Apply. You have to come to our website to apply. There's no way for LinkedIn to know how many applicants we have. There's just like no physical, there's no connection. They have no way of knowing. So it's just giving you a number. So, and like I said, I mean, we're getting inundated with bots and fake apps. So a lot of the applications that we get, we're able to really weed out quickly. So just because there's 300 applications doesn't mean there's 300 great people. It's possible that I once actually did a count and I went through about 200 applications, and out of that group, I found 14 that were even worth, that's like for my initial glance, like of like, the 5 seconds, like, do they have the right job titles and sort of like industry experience? Just that there were like 14 in the group. And then after that, you have to actually like go through, um, you know, how qualified are they? And so, yeah, I think some people psych themselves out on that number.
Yeah, and to tag onto that too, what I would say too is a lot of times, depending on the size of the company too, especially if they're using Indeed or whatever, it costs them money anytime somebody submits. So they're going to shut it down after a minute to catch up and see, oh, what do we really have before they reopen it and spend more money on it as well, depending on the plans and stuff they got. So I've seen companies do that too. Where they'll open the job up for a little bit, they'll get so inundated, they'll close it on Indeed or wherever they got it posted, get through what they can, and then they might reopen it. So you'll see that sometimes too. You think it's closed, really hasn't. They're just trying to catch up.
Well, before we transition over to the Q&A, is there something that y'all have just been like, when I join this panel today, I want to make sure that I give this little bit of advice to everyone listening? So, just a little open-ended question to the panel for a second. Like one piece of advice you always give job seekers. Maybe they rarely follow it, or maybe it's just something that you see is pretty impactful.
I'll go first. I think mine is to just remind them to be patient, that this is a process and it is changing. And as we talked about, you asked us what our keywords were when we first started. I think that's what I go back to, is just to remind them that especially if I'm their recruiter and I'm working with them, is to be patient, stay in constant communication, and let's work together. If you see something and you think something's already happened and I haven't called you, then call me. Don't always wait on me either, right? Because I'm not just working with you, I'm working with other candidates as well on that side of the thing. And trust the process, And if you've built a relationship with me, I'm going to fight for you and I'm going to do everything I can for you. But if you start going off in other ways too, and then you're not communicating with me anymore either, and now I've got these opportunities for you and we're not communicating well anymore, then that process has been broken, right? So you've got to build trust with your recruiter and communicate. And be patient. It's the key thing I can say, but communication is the biggest advice I'll
So,
give.
so on this patience piece, how long should job seekers be prepared for going from entry to executive? Like, so entry maybe like manager to director, VP, executive. General ideas from the panelists based on what you're seeing?
We're seeing anywhere from 4 to 6 rounds now for management, production level type roles.
Well, don't like months. How about months from
Oh,
application to hire, like or interview to hire?
that's going to be tricky. It really kind of depends on the company, to be honest with you. I mean, it really does. There are some companies that get out there and they move pretty quickly and they're hiring within a few weeks because they got to fill it. And then you've got other companies, I've seen it where it takes 3 or 4 months. So I wish I had a magic 8 ball to tell you what norm, but I would say you need to expect at least a month. I mean, I don't think you're going to get
Well,
hired
let me
on.
let me qualify it one more time because I keep asking better questions, which is good. Uh, when someone starts their job search to when they land, what are you seeing from people that you first start talking to when they tell you how long they've been looking?
Again, I think that's another one. I'll let Bonnie go in on that one too. But I mean, that's another one. It really depends on the type of role and the company that you're working with on what you're seeing. But I mean, I'm talking to people that have been out there for 6 months longer and still even trying to get interviews and hadn't even really made it down the process yet. Talked to people that have been in it a year. And then I've talked to people that have been in it for 3 weeks and they got lucky one and they did it. But I mean, right now, you're not going to get, I think from minute to go, you're looking 2 to 3 months, I would say, on average for a typical role right now, is what I'm seeing. And that's not taking in, all sorts of different things, but just trying to get a median on it. Throw that out there.
I saw some data that said that the typical job search right now for people is like 6+ months. And so I do think if someone, especially if you like lose your job and then it's like, gosh, I have to get something new, I would plan for 6 months of unemployment. I do think, I mean, like Michelle said, it's so dependent on industry. If you are a teacher, I mean, and certified, or even like you're in an area that has emergency certification, I mean, they could probably get you in a classroom in a week, because they're really desperate, and every day without teachers is, or substitute teachers. We used to get people in within days of an application because you're desperate. You need an adult in the classroom, a safe adult. So it's, um, as quickly. Nursing, you can go quickly. A lot of companies, or, not companies, but hospital systems, things will pay for some training. But obviously these are really niche and not everyone can go into nursing without a lot of training and stuff. But there are places where things will move quickly. Retail around the holidays, that might be a good move this time of year. Like if you're looking for corporate job, keep applying, but get a retail job to get you through the holidays, where they're doing a lot of the seasonal hiring right now, because it's unlikely that you're, going to get something sooner. And if you do, you can quit. But yeah, I mean, there's certain people who we see people who aren't, are employed, aren't even looking, and then they've got like 3 offers, a month into their search. But it just kind of depends on what your qualifications are, what you're applying for. And yeah, like it can run the gamut.
I think I have seen very similar, lots of 6 months. It's so dependent on the role, though. I've talked to a lot of executive level leaders this year specifically, and those are the roles we're seeing slimmer and slimmer of, from at least my purview, and a lot of our different departments as well at Robert Half. So sometimes for executive level roles, it's leaning even closer to 10 to 12 months, which is really tough. It's very unfortunate. But that's also similar with entry level. Not a lot of companies are able to invest in entry level talent right now. So I am seeing more mid level roles, but sometimes again it's taken about 6 months for those to complete, and it's again so dependent on the skill set. If you're more of a SME in an area, if you're more of a generalist, and the industry as well. There's a lot of industries that are laying off people more than others are. So there's just so many different variables. It's kind of difficult to highlight one set amount of time.
But hopefully, at least we're taking away it's plan for more than plan for less, and personalize your approach, build your brand in the process, make connections along the way, because it is not a market for talent right now. It's not. It might switch in the future, and you'll have all these lovely skills to take advantage of those opportunities. But it's patience. It will be frustrating, but also try to look at all these amazing panelists that are trying to offer their talent and their advice. This is our opportunity now to shift over to the Q&A. And I'm not sure if panelists, you saw any of the questions that were coming through the chat, but would love for you to take a moment and browse through them. I know there were a couple. And anyone that is here that has a question, please throw it into the chat or the Q&A section. And let's see. Sydney, do you see a question in the chat that you think would be valuable to bring up front, and would you like to give a response to?
Yes. Sorry, I was just skimming all of them. I saw one from Amanda. It looks like she said, if we are applying for multiple roles and tailoring our resume, how can we tailor our LinkedIn profile if roles and responsibilities are so different? And Amanda, that's a great question. I do think the large thing I'm noticing in your message is that lots of roles and responsibilities are so different. I think that also is very dependent. Are you mainly looking at one primary, role and responsibility, or are you seeking a lot of different positions? And the reason I say that, I know a finance and accounting job, for example, can be very cut and dry. And every single job that you see, it's going to be pretty similar. The tool stack that they're looking for, the types of platforms you'd be working on versus the marketing role. A marketing manager can look like something vastly different across businesses. So I think as long as you're really highlighting, again, any key accomplishments you have, any technical platforms that you bring to the table and you have proficiencies with, key skill sets, something that kind of checks most of the high level boxes, that's going to be really important. And then you can, again, filter your resume a little bit more honed in for each of those more niche areas on a job posting. But I'd say make sure you're absolutely updating your skills section, including those technical platforms in every role as well that you have on your LinkedIn, and those key accomplishments. And that will be a good starting point.
I like what you said there, and how you're kind of highlighting that really, if you're targeted, your one resume should apply. And maybe you do some title changes or maybe a summary change to make it more relevant, but really it shouldn't be too much curation. And so this idea of like having to use an AI tool to redo your resume for every single job, to what Bonnie said, it'd actually be hurting you. And because they're like, it doesn't either, it all sounds the same, or it's not based on your actual experience, or it really isn't, it's just not, it's like maybe you apply for multiple jobs and they're just like, who is this person? So I really appreciate you sharing that, Sydney. Back to the panelists. Either continuation of that question, or you see another question in the chat that you would like to answer.
Yeah, I saw a question about just sort of like transferring across industries. And I think it definitely depends on like the industries and how similar they are, slash like what kind of niche knowledge you would need. I mean, I transitioned from my whole career being education and nonprofits into recruiting for a tech company. I had the tailwind in my favor of the fact that like tech companies were hiring recruiters like crazy in 2021 because they were just blowing up. And so they were much more willing to take chances on people. But I also really tried to highlight like how even though I had been in a different space, we still hired similar roles. So I really focused in on things like the marketing and like HR ops finance roles that my team had hired. And so to kind of show what the transferable skills were, I think I would have had a much harder time if I was going for like a technical recruiting role, because that's just much more like niche knowledge that I genuinely didn't have. So I think it's like being able to kind of show how what you've done is pretty similar. Now, if they're looking for like, I think the example you had is going from like e-commerce to insurance. Um, if for insurance recruiting, they need someone who's specialized at recruiting for certain certification that's like hard to find or something like that, like they might not be willing to take a chance on someone that hasn't hired for that kind of role. But if it's like the same kind of roles, just at a company that's a little bit different, that's probably not going to be that important. I find that it becomes most important when like there's really specific industry, like healthcare recruiting. That's a kind of a unique niche that not everyone can do. Same with like tech recruiting. And so I think it kind of depends, but if it's general corporate recruiting, I feel like you can kind of transfer from one to the other more easily.
Yeah, there was one in here about, I think Chrissy wrote it about how detailed your resumes need to be. And one, I would say don't do an 8-10 page resume with all your stuff on it. Please don't vomit in your resume because you're never going to get it read. Focus on 3 to 5 bullets within each company you've worked for. And man, numbers stand out. So if I think Bonnie, you talked about doing 3, program redos, right? Show numbers and talk about the tangible things you did, because those are the things that are going to pop out, because they're skimming it, looking real quick for those key things that are going to say, yep, this person has, at least on paper, what it looks like we might be looking for. They're worth a call. And so I'd say don't get detailed, get specific key insights to what shows what you have done that's relatable. And, I think going back to what we were talking about too, so you don't have to keep redoing it. Some of those things are very relatable across many different industries, right? So if you've worked with CRM systems, right? How many CRM systems have you worked with? And if you've implemented new CRM systems, how many have you implemented? Whatever it might be, those are the things you want to share in there. Numbers stand out more than 10 bullet points of you collaborating with a team and showing good, teamwork and that kind of thing. That's standard. We know most people are doing that. What are the things you're doing that are outside the normal that they're looking for?
I also, to add on to that, Michelle, I think if people are, again, trying to apply to a couple of different positions, and they are having to make a lot of tweaks to their resume, create a master resume version where you have each role listed off, still a similar resume format, but you could insert then any and all bullet point you've ever used on basically any job application. And it doesn't have to be just 3 to 5. You could have up to 8 to 10, and then you can filter and choose for each role you're applying to. And don't be afraid to also have a couple different versions. I saw someone say, I'm looking for L&D or OD or, talent management. Have a resume for each of those. So again, you're not having to do the hard work every single time you apply. Do the hard work up front. Make a master resume or make a couple different versions, and then tweak as needed from there.
I saw an additional question around, well, then what do I do with my LinkedIn profile? Well, L&D, OD, talent management, those are all related keywords that you can very easily have in a headline that's searchable. You can also adjust your job titles or add them to your job titles. Your LinkedIn just needs to relate to the experiences you've had. You can add to it. Like you can be a L&D manager and then have the keyword OD, organizational development, somewhere if it relates to something that you've been a part of. You can add an organization that has OD in it in a skill, or you can add keywords to your LinkedIn profile that will help adjust and build kind of that brand overall. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I was going to echo, you can kind of keep it like high level. You don't need to have everything that's on your resume on your LinkedIn, but just like some of the keywords and things like that. I also think LinkedIn gives you an opportunity with that about section to explain. So you can say, look, like for me, I've had 2 disparate careers. I started actually a couple, but I was a teacher. then I managed a teacher development program and, did that kind of stuff. Like, so L&D, program management, could kind of go any direction there. And then I pivoted into like talent acquisition. And so if I wanted to go back into like the education side, the last decade of my career, I would need to downplay because it just wouldn't be relevant. I wouldn't take it off completely, but I would probably do like a summary at the top of my resume that was like career achievements. And that would be like 4 or 5 things from earlier in my career that would show like I really have a lot of experience on that program management and L&D side of things. And then you can go into my experience. I would keep it really brief with my recruiting job, portions, and then I would have more details at my earlier jobs. And I would, it would make it really clear, hey, I did this like decade in talent acquisition, but I'm excited to get back into this other space, and I definitely have the credentials for that as well. So I think like that's okay to have a couple of versions of your resume like that, but it should make sense. It shouldn't be like what I've seen where someone for the same company has like a job that's like, COO, and then a job that's like performance marketing manager. And it's like, I'm confused. Like, which of these were you?
And to your point, someone's reading your resume or your LinkedIn profile. Are they going to say, I'm confused? And if they are, then we got to move some stuff around. Like, you don't have to do a chronological resume. If your experience is 5 years, 6 years in the past that's relevant to the job, you can move that to the top, have relevant experience, have the list, but you have to make sure that it's there, or have a key achievements section. But so before we jump back into the questions, so we've been talking about the resume, but when you also talk to people that are on the job market, like you actually get on the phone with them and they start talking about their experiences. We haven't said anything about this yet. Uh, just real quick, like what's something that you see works really well, what blows you away, and something that really turns you off when you finally get someone on the phone?
Oh, my biggest turn off would be when they read me their resume. I've already read your resume. I don't need you to read me your resume. I've already done it. I want to know the story. I want to know your journey. I want to know what took you from where you started after you graduated college or wherever it was to your journey of where you gotten today. Just like Bonnie did a brief thing. If she just goes, I was in education, then I was in this, and I was that. That's what I want to know. Like, tell me why. What took you through that journey? Why were you in that? Because somewhere when you're telling me that journey, I'm going to learn a little bit more about your passion and who you really are and what drives you and your culture and your values and things like that through you telling me that story. Do not read me your resume. First, I tone out. I'm like, oh Lord, here we go.
Okay, I saw a couple head nods. There we go, Sydney. What else?
I've experienced the same that Michelle has. I do a lot of interview preps with my candidates too, and I always say, sure, you can go the route of, walking through your background in chronological or reverse chronological order. But I also think it's better to give more of like a high level synopsis where you're touching on years of experience, industries, companies you've worked for. And then you're talking about key highlights from, your roles, high level accomplishments. You can dive a little bit into the tech stack about your management responsibility, but you want to keep it, 1 to 2 minute summary at best. You don't want to be boring the person. I've listened to 5 to 10 minute spiels from candidates before, and it has you bored at the end of it. And I think, as Michelle highlighted, there's a lot you can learn from someone giving that high level overview, and you can get a lot of a better sense of personality and what they're looking for. So come up with that really, enticing elevator pitch. But make sure you're still touching on really relevant information. You don't just want to say, oh, well, I started at this job and then I had an opportunity because a friend knew someone at this company and I joined here. That tells me nothing about what you did. So still have some, applicable, highlights and accomplishments from each role as well.
Okay, I also saw a question about the rigorousness. This was hinted during the call already of interviews. And I've actually had a lot of clients that had a couple job offers at a time, like get a pretty significant, hey, can you do this presentation for us? And yeah, I know you've probably heard before, like they're just wanting me to do free work. And like, do you have any, like, what are your tips from, or what are you seeing even from employers? And are they doing more of this? Why are they doing this? Do you have any suggestions on how a candidate should respond or manage it?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been standard. Anywhere I've worked, honestly, it's been standard that you do a presentation or a skills assessment. This was true in education. It's true. Like we had teachers do a sample lesson. Um, yeah. So it's like fairly standard practice in my experience. And I, so yeah, I don't find it atypical. I do think like a lot is being asked. And sometimes we on the recruiting side push back on it, like some of our roles where they're like having them, they have to build a kind of complex Zap, and to show Zap is like what we call like building on our platform, essentially, like build a solution. And they have to do like a presentation, like a sales pitch or something. And it's like, okay, this is getting a lot. But the reality is it's like showing the skills. And I think one of the reasons it's happening is that people are doing so much of like, they know how to talk the talk. They can use an AI tool to give them the exact script and talking points and come in and sound like they know what they're doing. But then it's like when you get down to actually having to talk about it and answer questions that they start falling short. And so I think that part of it is this attempt to like really see what skills people bring, because talking about the role just doesn't people know how to answer interview questions at this point. And so a lot of times it falls apart once they actually have to show the skills they claim to have. um, so yeah, that's why I see it happening. I would be cautious if it's actually something usable. I think I see the like free labor thing a lot, and I think some people overestimate how like original what they're doing is, because usually you just don't have the information about like the company and their strategy and all of this stuff to like do something that they could actually take and use. They're asking you to design a social campaign. If they're asking you to do a video with no watermark that they could put on their, social media, that's like very concerning and I wouldn't do it. But usually I think more what they're trying to get at is like assess your skills. And I would also say you can advocate for yourself if what they're asking is too much. You can, like, we've had this before, someone say like, hey, I've done some similar things, rather than creating something new, can I share with you a work sample? And then talk through like what my role in this was, or how can we modify this so it can be done in under 3 hours, that sort of thing. So it's okay to like ask those questions and have the discussion as well.
Yeah, I'll say we're seeing more of it too. I haven't seen extreme amounts of it yet, but I am starting to see more of it happening. And I think, it's several reasons. One, they want to make sure that what you're really saying, you're doing, because it costs employers a lot of money to hire somebody. The whole processing, the onboarding, all of that stuff, whether they use outside recruiters, internal recruiters, however working, it's money that they're spending, valuable money. And so, and then too many times you get people hired and then you go through all the onboarding and then they get started. And then 2 months later, you find out they didn't know what they did. And now you're starting all over again. And now they've just lost even more money. So I think they do it to try to find better ways to, one, weed out, make sure you can really do it. And two, to cut back on the cost and expense, hoping that they get the right person in the seat the first time.
Something with some of these projects, I love the idea of pushing back a little bit to say, hey, can I show you a work sample? And, or hey, this is going to take 3 hours if I do it this way. How about we do a skeleton version? And I talk you through and walk you through my thought process. Are you seeing though, like Michelle, Sydney, Bonnie, with when people are getting on the phone, what percentage of people have their story down pat? Like they're about me, are actually pretty good at answering interview questions? Is it almost everybody? Is it 1%, 10%, 50%, 80%? Like I think this would be helpful for people on the market just to know like how much would it set them apart from the competition? Would it just make them equal, or would it actually change the game? Or put them in a select
I will
number?
say going in with some really tangible, relevant questions is important. Because I too many times I'll say, well, what do you have to ask me? And then at the end they just go, oh no, you pretty much answered everything through our interview. I don't have really anything else. Yes, you do. And ask them. Ask those questions. Because remember, this is two-way, just like I call it like dating, right? Your speed dating, your speed, whatever, right? You're trying to find out if you also are going to be long-term happy at that company as well. So ask those hard questions back and make sure you know what they are. AI can even help you find those questions and and put them to what it sounds like that you want, right? You say, I'm looking for a company that does A, B, C, D, and would give me this and allows me, and then AI will say, okay, then you're going to want to ask these 3 questions during your interview, right? But I think that makes you stand out when you actually do have relevant questions that are impactful to them, right? Like, instead of just saying, oh, I don't know, or checking the box of just a standard question, right? I think being more intentional about the questions you're asking, make sure that they're relevant, shows that you're truly invested as well and you care.
I tend to see, kind of jumping back to the elevator pitch, a lot more of my mid to senior level, folks who've been in it, for many, many years. They've had a lot more experience probably interviewing or networking and talking to folks. They tend to have it down a lot better than more entry level or even some other mid level folks. But I would say probably about 60% of the people I talk to, I will, be really happy with what they've shared. There's probably only a good 10, percent of people I talk to on a monthly basis where I will compliment them and say, wow, that is the best pitch I've heard all month. Because they check all the boxes. I don't have to ask as many follow-up questions as I typically do with other candidates. So I do truly think if people, hone their craft, learn that pitch, and pitch it confidently, and again, let your personality shine when you're sharing that, that's absolutely going to help you stand out in the process.
Yeah, I think I would add like I think it speaks to communication skills, like and I've seen that be something that our hiring managers highlight. Like if someone's about me or is sort of like walk through their resume, either reads the resume or is just like, meanders for 7 minutes over everything they did. I've seen that kind of say like, hey, their kind of communications like ability to just like kind of understand like what the goal is of the space, like it doesn't feel as strong. And so, and I think sometimes candidates will do that because they're trying to use this opportunity to push in everything. But what they're really looking for is, can you give that 90-second elevator pitch that gets us excited to hear from you and that highlights like 2 or 3 things you've done that are going to really align with this role, that are going to get us feeling like, yep, I see the story here. And then like, they're going to dig in. And so, yeah, I think it kind of shows like a lot of soft skills too, like how you tackle that simple question. And it's something you can prepare for. So I think that helps too.
One of the most, I think, underrated strategies I've seen for people, like outside of getting the interview stuff, is just using like having a ChatGPT paid version and using the voice function to practice interviewing. And they'll even transcribe, they'll organize your stories in a way that can be more effective. And because it is a way to stand out. And it's good to know too, though, that senior, mid to senior, like their about me's are pretty good. Like you kind of like need that to even qualify. Like you get to, when you get on a call with someone, you need to know your stories. They need to be clear, concise, direct, to the point, not too many details. Okay, this has been awesome, amazing. I would love for our panelists just to share, how can people follow your journey? What should they go check out? What would you like to share right now, to plug? And you don't have to, but if you have any final piece of advice uh, that you think is relevant that we haven't touched on yet, I think we've touched on a lot. Feel free to share. So Bonnie, you're unmuted, so you're jumping in first.
Getting to mute. I think mine would be like this, I would just remind people this feels super overwhelming. And uh not normal, and that's because it's not. It feels that way on both sides. Like recruiters are also like, what do we do with, every time I post a job I get 500 applications, I have no idea who's real or not. Why, on both sides it's like this doesn't feel normal, and it's not. I'm sure at some point the right solutions will come, but so I guess I would just say like validate that feeling, and say that that's like normal, and then like where you can have like take agency for navigating it and standing out, because most people aren't like, less than 1% of candidates actually reach out to anyone at the company. So even though it might feel like I'm just going to be, you know, yet another voice, you're not. Like that stuff really will stand out. So taking a little bit of agency to differentiate yourself will really get noticed. And is personally like what I would do in this situation.
And is there somewhere you want to send people to check you out, follow
Oh
you,
yeah, I
anything like
have
that?
sorry, forgot about that. I have I'm on like LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram. It's all actually I have a Facebook page now too. I forgot about that. So anywhere, I have a newsletter. Yeah. So I have like lots of content, talk about like recruiting and job search stuff. So yeah, check it out.
Okay, Sydney.
I would say my biggest social media is probably just my LinkedIn right now. Next year, maybe I'll be branching out to other platforms. But my biggest thing from an advice standpoint is firstly just saying kudos to all of you taking this step and even attending a panel like this and hearing from industry experts is more than a lot of people are doing right now. So even just doing something this small and listening in and participating is huge. But I think the biggest thing is remember you're not alone. There's a lot of people you can talk to, you can connect with about this, and keep hanging in there and continue to differentiate yourself as best as you possibly can.
Oops. All right. Got me unmuted. Yes, you can just go find me. It's Michelle Carlberg-Segers on LinkedIn, and all my contact information, my email, all that you can find there. I went ahead and posted it. I don't try to hide it like everybody else does. That's another thing I will say with my big advice. Make sure they can find you, right? I don't know about you guys, but I've gotten resumes in and there's no contact information in there. Like not a phone number, not an email, not anything. And you're like, oh, you put all this work in and I can't contact you. It happens more than you would imagine. So make sure your resume is up to date with all the right contact email information, because in the best market, when you're fighting to get there and then we can't reach you, that really is a bummer. So that, and then, like I said earlier, communication. And a lot of folks like Robert have recruitability. We work with candidates. Call us. It costs you nothing to call and do an interview with us. We can kind of talk you through your resume, give you some tips. We may or may not have something for you or be able to help you find something, but at least we're a resource for you to get maybe some more information on, tweaking your resume or something like that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if someone has their number, especially someone at one of these recruiting organizations, pick up the phone and call them. Because if they're listing their phone number online, they're looking for people to call, and people aren't calling. Maybe people that are trying to sell stuff. So there is, again, be the person with the boombox outside the window, singing lullabies and songs to your romantic partner who's this job that you think you're perfect for. Make yourself stand out, and keep your head up because it's tough out there. You're not alone, and it's messy on all sides. And I think that is a takeaway that is really resonating with me. Among all the other ones. So thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Sydney. Thank you, Bonnie. You have been incredible. Really appreciate you. Big round of applause, and hope all of our panelists connect with each other. And I hope all of our attendees connect with our panelists. So check them out, follow, and thank you everyone again.
Bye. Thank you.